Hi, we are Brenda and Gavin O'Neill. We were asked by the stake to talk to you guys about anxiety and depression, finding hope through that. And we were assigned this topic well before this whole pandemic thing started. So hopefully we can help some of you through this time as well. Obviously, we weren't going to be on video till this all started, and we don't really like being on video, so if we're kind of goofy or we do something weird, we apologize. So bear with us. Little background about each of us. I'm a physical therapist for St. Luke's at the hospital, and Gavin works for the Caldwell School District as a social worker, and so he has a lot of professional insight into this topic, and we both have personal experience with anxiety and depression with our families and just mental health things. Gavin has ADHD, one of those. And so we feel like we have a little bit to share with you. So hopefully something that we say can kind of speak with you.
And the experiences that we share they're not a catch-all. We're just giving you some experiences and some suggestions and some tools maybe. But obviously this isn't all-inclusive. And what we've been through, some people have been through way worse. We're not using this as a, hey, woe is me, look at our family. But we want you guys to just be aware that, this is what's going on. This is real. These are things that people really do struggle with, and some people really struggle with them.
I was talking to my parents about this. Both of them have clinical depression. They're both on antidepressive medications. They've gone through, I don't know how many different kinds, trying to find ones that work for them. My mom has gone back and forth trying to get off of her meds and realizing that it just doesn't work for her. My dad has been on meds and...
Doesn't work for her to not be on medication.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, she needs the meds. And if she even misses one day, she can tell later. She's like, something is off. But my dad, he's been on antidepressants for a long time. And he's tried going to therapy a few times, and he just never found something that clicked with him. So recently he told me, he's like, I had to hit rock bottom before I realized that I needed some serious help. So he moved to a new city, and he found someone that he really clicks with, that understands him and he gets him. And it's been a huge improvement for him, just in his overall daily life and tools that he's been given. And, he still struggles, and everything is not hunky-dory, but he is the happiest I've seen him in years. So there are tools out there. There are ways to get help. Myself, I have been a stressed out person my whole life. I just run at a high level of stress. And it, that's shown its face in different ways. I went through a graduate program. It was intense. It was crazy. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So of course that just shot my stress levels up, right? So you could find me every semester in some professor's office crying because I wasn't going to do enough to be enough, and really it was okay,
And I was the opposite. You never saw me in the professor's office.
Gavin just winged school,
Oh, yeah.
So each of us have a different level. I've gone through periods where I've had super high blood pressure, other times where I've gone through panic attacks, intense panic attacks at work or at home, different varying things, So we all have our different experiences, and I'm hoping that something that we say can really touch you guys. Obviously, with Gavin's background, he has a little bit more of a professional take on this as well. So I'm going to let him kind of go through and talk a little bit about just kind of what anxiety and depression looks like, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So I don't want to give a textbook definition of anxiety and depression. If you want a textbook definition, go look it up. It's on Google. But I want to give us some more real-world examples of what it kind of looks like and what people can experience, and give us some things to relate to. So anxiety and depression are very closely related, but they're not the same thing. And a lot of people just think automatically, oh, anxiety, depression, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. And there's people who have anxiety and there's people who have depression. And there's a lot of people that have both. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. But where we're pulling our information today from is from the church's website, churchofjesuschrist.org/gethelp/mental health. And then that's the way I prefer to look it up. Brenda prefers a different way.
You can also look it up through the Gospel Library. It is under Life, Help, and Self-Reliance, and then you can click on the Mental Health tab, and then it opens up.
And we'll go through the website too. We're going to look at it a little bit too. So we're going to pull some information from there. We're also going to pull information from personal experiences, as Brenda's already shared some, from professional expertise, conference talks, and scriptures. My approach with depends on the person, but my approach with mental health is it's all inclusive. We need a balance. Excuse me. So, what causes someone to get a mental illness? And I'm going to use the website specifically for this to answer this question. So let me flip here. So, what causes someone to get a mental illness?
I don't think you clicked the other one.
I didn't.
Sorry. No.
There we go.
Now you have both.
Now I have both.
Dang it.
I know, just the one. Anyways, so this is the website. What causes someone to get a mental illness? While the causes of mental illness are complex and debated among professionals, we know that mental illness is not a result of sin or weakness of character. Some possible causes of mental illness include chemical imbalance in the brain, genetic predisposition, brain damage due to a head injury, chronic or ongoing medical concern, abuse, including physical, verbal, or sexual, trauma related to military combat, a traumatic event such as the death of a loved one, financial loss, or divorce. This is straight from the church's website, as I said, and it's a great resource. A lot of times and this is what they put in there, some possible causes of mental illness include, and the first one they talk about is chemical imbalances in the brain. That's the one I'm going to focus a little bit more on today. But we don't know all the reasons why people have mental illness, why we have mental illness in the world. We have some ideas and we have some science that tells us some things, but we don't have all the answers. And excuse me, but we're going to go back to us now. There's us. So in regard to chemical imbalances, I like to give some good analogies, and the analogy that I like to use is one that I learned from Brenda, because she was trying to explain mental health and depression to a family member who just wasn't getting it, and didn't understand what mental illness was coming from. Why, what is the big deal? Why is it an issue? What's it like? I just don't get it. And I feel like there's a lot of people in the world who just don't get it. There's a lot of people who think, mental health is fake. It's not real. Mental illness is made up, and that people are just trying to be lazy. And that's not true at all. And that website that we just shared is from the church. It's from a prophet of God saying, hey, we recognize that mental health is a real thing and mental illness is a problem. And so they're providing resources for us. And so when and I'll have Brenda share her example, but her example is really important. I think it's a really good way to connect on, especially for women, on what mental illness can look like.
So I related it to your period, right? PMS. You go through so many crazy hormone changes throughout your cycle, right? And sometimes you just have no idea why you feel the way you do. And there was one time when I was in college and I was just angry at my roommate, just one in particular, just livid. And there was no reason for it. I couldn't understand it. It was actually freaking me out a little bit. So I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, why am I so mad? And turns out, the next day I started my period and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never experienced anything like that before. And sometimes I feel like you just have these chemical imbalances in your brain and your body, and it just doesn't know how to work right. And so you can't control your emotions, and there are things that you need to do. PMS comes and goes, but sometimes with anxiety and depression, that's like a constant thing that you're dealing with, and sometimes you need more than just trying to deal with it,
And when people say, just be happy, you can do it. And, and if you're sad, just read your scriptures or go to the temple and you'll feel better. For someone who has a chemical imbalance in their brain, who's dealing with hormonal changes, it's not going to work. They need more help. And not to say that going to the temple or reading your scriptures is bad. That's a great thing, and it will help you. But it's not the answer to everything at this point for mental health. And so what does anxiety and depression look like? So anxiety and depression, anxiety itself can be, for most people, we feel stress. Not everybody feels stress. But stress isn't anxiety. Anxiety is overwhelming stress. It's the type of stress that keeps you from functioning. It's the type of stress that makes you, OCD can be a part of that. You have to perpetually clean your house because you are so anxious about what will happen or anxious about the unknown. And again, this is all generalized. I'm not getting into specifics, but anxiety can be overwhelming, and it can physically cause some major problems. It can cause heart palpitations. It can cause heart issues where people might think they're having a heart attack or a stroke, and they might end up in the hospital. It can also cause what's called pseudo-seizures. And so you can have real seizures that are not affecting your brain, but your body is convulsing and you have no control over it, just like a seizure. And you can cause a lot of damage to yourself. You usually end up in the hospital or on an ambulance ride at the very least. It can be very hurtful, very, very hard. And then on top of that, so then let's say you're dealing with all that and you don't know what's going on, then you start avoiding things because you're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And so then you start getting depressed because you're avoiding all the things that you used to do. And then you start going into bouts of depression. And depression is sadness, but it's overwhelming sadness. It's not a period of sadness. It's months or weeks, long periods of time that are just impossible for you to get out of. No matter how happy you want to be or how happy you try to be, it's wanting to be productive but not being able to, and it is overwhelming for people who have experienced major depression. And it's not fun. It's not exciting, and it's not something you can just say tough up, pull up your bootstraps, and go to work. Like you just can't. It's not as simple as that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what some anxiety looks like within the church, is especially with women, is a lot of it has to do with perfectionism. There's a standard we're trying to live up to, which is Christ. We're trying to be like Christ. And sometimes, especially with people who have anxiety, that is overwhelming. And the goal of getting to perfection causes major issues that people shut down. I've seen people leave the church. I've seen people stop going to church because they just can't handle it. And that's not what the Lord is teaching, and that's not what we're trying to teach. We're trying to teach people to love and accept each other and move forward together because we are imperfect. We are trying to be perfect eventually, but we're not going to do it tomorrow. But that's a lot of the stuff happens is within that. And obviously everybody has different varying levels of anxiety, whether it's high or low. I get anxious, not anxiety, but I get anxious when I have to give talks, or when I have to speak, or when I have a big assignment coming up or work coming up. What I do to deal with it is I ignore it till like the day of, and then I get it all burst into one. Brenda tries to stretch it out to help her with her anxiety, and that works for her, and so far it's functioned for me. It's not always the healthiest.
But what he's not telling you is that he bottles up his anxiety, right, and his stress, and then it presents in weird, random ways, like his neck will start hurting and it doesn't make any sense, or stuff like that. And so sometimes we have to look for other things if there's like weird stuff going on. Like, why? What are we stressing about? What's happening?
And that's for basic stress. That's not for somebody who feels this all the time, every day, what's going on. We are going to talk a little bit more about some things that we can go through and to help, and that's where I'm going to turn the time back over to Brenda.
So I have a friend that I look up to. She's been through a lot. She has 6 kids, and her journey started, I think, around her third child. So let me just give you a quick rundown on her. I'm going to call her Annie, right? Just so that I'm not using her name. So in the past 8 years, she's been professionally diagnosed with clinical depression, postpartum depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, okay? So that all kind of started after a really traumatic pregnancy for her. And she was to the point where, I think, how old was her oldest? She was like 4 or 5. And she was taking care of the little ones, right? Because
the 5-year-old was taking care of the other kids.
Because my friend she shut down. Like, she couldn't handle life, right? And it was super scary for her and her family. And she ended up going to therapy. So she's had 5 different therapists in 4 different states.
And to hold off on that part, is that she said 5 different therapists. That doesn't mean that's all the therapists she's gone to. She's gone to countless numbers of counselors and therapists to try and find one that she clicked with, that things made sense.
Yep. So she's gone through all sorts of stuff. If someone didn't mesh with her, then she went to someone else. So they move around a lot. So they've lived in 4 different states since this has started. And most recently, she hasn't found a therapist because she's been trying, but she just hasn't found the right fit for her. And she's not currently using medication, but she has in the past. So it just kind of, she feels like she can handle what's going on right now without the medication, just through some of the tools that she's found through going to therapy. So that's just a little bit about her. So she kind of gave me some tips, some things that have helped her get through some of those really tough times. So we've kind of broken them up into some sections. So we'll kind of go through them with you. So the first thing you can try to do is create a paradigm shift. And what that means is you're kind of looking at things from a different perspective, essentially. So the first little trick that she does when she gets kind of overwhelmed with what's her to-do list, whatever's happening, she calls it the 2-minute rule. If there is something on her list of things that needs to get done and she can do it in 2 minutes or less, you just have to get it done. It checks something off your to-do list. It checks something off the pile of things weighing you down, and it took you 2 minutes or less to do it. And then it's done. And then you can move on. And then it's not just sitting there waiting around for you. So whether it's that sock that's laying on the ground and you can just pick it up and put it away, or there is a couple of dishes that you can just put in the dishwasher really quickly, or whatever it is. If it can take you 2 minutes or less, just get it done, okay? The next thing that she kind of focused on was don't discount little joys, okay? So the little things in life, cherish them, okay? It doesn't have to be a big thing to make you happy. And some of the things that she talked about was, if you have your like favorite shirt on and it's so comfortable and you just are so comfortable, enjoy that moment, you know? If you just made an amazing dinner and you took that first bite, just like savor that, enjoy that moment, even if your kids are screaming on the other half of the table, right? Like, just enjoy yourself in that moment. And if you have cleaned the kitchen, one little spot on the countertop, and that gives you peace of mind for that one spot, and that kind of speaks to me because I hate clutter and I want everything in its spot. And when things are all over the place, then it like gets at me. You can ask him, like, I need the bed made, right? And
I don't.
And if it's not made, like, I need it to be made, right? And so sometimes he'll make it, if he's home while I'm at work or something, he'll go all day, but make sure that he makes it right before I come home, because he knows that like makes a difference to me. So even if that one little spot on the countertop is clean, but the rest of the counter is a total disaster, like, focus on the things that bring you peace and joy rather than the things that are totally chaotic, okay? And then I'm going to let Gavin talk about this next one.
So the next section she talked about is positive self-talk. A lot of times we get stuck in these downward spirals of, what's wrong in life, what's going on. And as Brenda was saying is, we're focus on the one little thing that you did do rather than all the other things that you haven't done. And focus on those things. And I love to bring in the scriptures in this, is that men are that they might have joy. God wants us to be happy. He wants us to be joyous. He wants us to have those things. He doesn't want us to be focusing on negative, horrible experiences. He wants us to feel joy. He wants us to experience true joy. And I'm going to read a scripture. So Ether 12:27. I love this scripture. I've loved it my entire life. And if men come unto me, I will show unto them their weakness. I give unto men weakness that they may be humble, and my grace is sufficient for all men that humble themselves before me. For if they humble themselves before me and have faith in me, then will I make weak things become strong unto them. So this is obviously Ether, and he's talking about his weaknesses. And we all have weaknesses. And you know what? I grew up thinking I had some weird issues with me, and I thought I was pretty weak in a lot of areas. And then I started going through school, but also just growing up, I started looking at my ADD as a strength. And when I switched that, it became a strength. A lot of times we are given weaknesses. God gives us weaknesses. God has given the world mental illness. That it's here. It's not Satan who caused mental illness. God gives weaknesses throughout the world to us so that we can come to him, and then our weaknesses can become strong. Things that we struggle with right now can be some of our greatest strengths. And Satan knows that, and he knows us, and so he's fighting against us. He doesn't want us to make our weak things strong, because some of those weak things that do become strong become the strongest things we have. And if we choose to change the way we believe if we have a weakness, it's a strength waiting to happen. It's a strength that we haven't yet discovered yet. And if we change the way we think, it creates that positive self-talk, and it switches our whole perspective on everything. So everything bad that happens to you, you may have your water lines blow out one day. That happened to us. And we chose to see how that could be a benefit to us, rather than a bad thing. We chose to, and we try to do this. We're not perfect, obviously, but every time something bad happens to us, we try to see the good in it. And it's been hard, but it's also been really helpful to us and our own spiritual growth, is to see how horrible, hard things can be really good for us.
And we try to say, okay, what can we learn from this experience? What are we supposed to get out of this? And not to say that we are great at that from the very beginning, but we really do try to have that perspective. And it's amazing as you start doing that, the things that you see that you have been blessed with because of those things happening. And, I have always felt like we are led down a path for a reason, and sometimes it's to get on another path. So sometimes when what you have planned, doesn't go the way that you want, sometimes it's because God needs you somewhere else, and he needs to get you on the right path. And going along with what Gavin was saying with positive self-talk, I took a class, and it was all about changing your negative beliefs about yourself, and looking at the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you think about things, and really doing an internal, what's the word?
Evaluation.
Evaluation of yourself, and knowing, okay, you kind of catch yourself in it, and that's the first thing you need to do. You need to catch yourself saying something negative so that you realize that you're doing it and that you can change that. And you know what? We can change. We can be whoever we want, and it starts with that little thing, and then we get to put whatever we want into that belief. We get to believe whatever we want about ourselves, and it's amazing the power that gives you to change yourself and to be more positive.
And to deny that, to say that I can't change, is to deny the atonement. the atonement is all about change. It's all about becoming more Christ-like. It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves that we can become. And that's what positive self-talk does. It gives us a little bit of glimpse of who we really can be.
So that kind of leads us into the next topic, which is honesty. And I really liked how my friend Annie worded this. So I'm just going to kind of read it for you. It says, it really helps to label how you're feeling with real words, okay? I'm feeling anxious about this. This is happening and it's causing me anxiety. I've been sad, more than sad lately. I'm depressed. Like, being honest with yourself about that and not just kind of blowing it off. It takes the weight off of yourself when you're willing to acknowledge that you're dealing with a bigger problem. Like, it's not something that you can fix right now, and it's going to be a longer process. And when you can take that into yourself and know, okay, this is something I'm going to have to work on, it becomes less of this astronomical, huge thing that you're like, how am I supposed to fix this right now? It's not something that you can fix in a day. It's something that is a process. It's learning about yourself. It's learning about whatever's happening inside your body, you know? And it helps when you have someone around you that can be supportive. They can help you deal with what you're going through. And that being said, you need to be completely open and honest with your loved ones, with your spouse, with whoever your support person is. Be honest with them about how you're doing. If they ask you how you're doing, don't just say that you're fine if you're not. Don't hide it. Don't wait for them to notice. Ugh, I can't believe they don't see how miserable I am. You know, men, sorry, that's a really big generalization.
Even a social worker.
They are oblivious, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not worrying about whatever is happening. And if I'm mad about something or sad and I go into my room, he's not coming after me to see what's wrong. He's like, whoa, she needs space or something. You know, like, if we don't open up and we don't ask for help, they're not going to help us. They don't know. And maybe some men are more perceptive than others. I don't want to, like, say that they're not going to notice, but we need to help people out. If we need help, we need to help ourselves out and let it be known, okay?
When your ministers come over and ask how you're doing and you say, oh, I'm fine, and you're not, that's not helping anybody. They are there to help you.
And what do you...
sent by the Lord to
I
help
ask
you.
people if there's anything I can help them with. Honestly, I want to help you. It helps me helping others. And if there is nothing I can help you with, it's like, how do I get to know you? How do I know innately that there's something I need to help you with, but I don't know what it is. So be honest and open with those people. And sometimes you feel like you're an assignment or whatever, but the only way for us to develop those relationships is to be open with each other and to be willing to let people in. People can't read your mind. You just need to say it out loud, okay? And I went to a Relief Society meeting in my brother-in-law's ward, and they had an amazing lesson about this topic. And if someone comes up to you and says, hey, how are you doing? And you say, oh, I'm fine. Like, we all know that's not true. Like, and it's almost become this kind of like passing by comment, you know, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm okay. And then you walk on. And then, like, what happens if someone actually tells you how they're doing? How do we react in our society? We're like, whoa, like, that's not what I was getting into, you know? And so we need to be on both sides of it. We need to be open and willing to help those people who are being honest with us about their feelings and about how they're doing. So rather than just like keeping on walking, if they say, you know what, I'm really struggling right now, take the time, especially right now. Like, we're all trapped in our houses, right? But how many of us have telephones? Everyone, right? How many people have you not been connecting with? Who do you know that needs a phone call, that just needs to talk to someone, and that would help them in whatever situation they're in? Be open and willing to help other people, and sometimes all you need to do is listen. The next topic is on priorities. Okay, so Annie says, fiercely protect your mental health. Okay, she talked about how it's so important to make your mental health a priority in your life. Okay, and before she agrees to anything, she kind of weighs it through her mind. She's like, okay, is this going to bring me joy? Is this going to uplift me? Or is this just going to drain me? And if it's going to drain her, she doesn't do it. And obviously there are things in life that stress us out. And we don't want it to become a crutch that we're like, oh, that stresses me out. I'm not even touching it ever. Never going to do anything that makes me uncomfortable.
Avoidance doesn't solve the problem.
Or that pushes me outside of my bubble. So we need to make sure that we are kind of getting a balance of getting things that build us up and kind of letting go of some of those things that maybe we don't need to be doing that put so much of a drain on us, that cause some of those triggers, anxiety and depression. But then really taking a mental evaluation is not the word I want. Like a checklist of how you're doing, and knowing that we do need to grow. We do need to push through some things, but get yourself in a good place first, okay? Before you start piling things on and trying to take on the world, make sure that you're sorting through the things that you need to be doing now and kind of letting go of some of the other things. Now is a great time. I was reading an article the other day, and it talked about this. We have the perfect opportunity right now during this pandemic where life has slowed down. It's crawling, right? Every day seems like 3 days. And we have the opportunity to take an inventory, see what things actually matter in your life, see what things are causing you stress, see what things are bringing you joy, and kind of prioritize those things in your life so that when things start to speed up again, you know what things you can let go of and what things you want to keep holding on to. And with that said, we need to foster true self-care, okay? And don't think that is removing all stress from your life. Like, you need to create a life that you don't need to escape from, okay? Sometimes we're like, oh, self-care. I'm going to go take a bubble bath in my, all by myself with my book and my candles and whatever. Like, that to me is not, like, relaxing. But some people love that. But that's escaping, right? And occasionally we need to do that. But on a day-to-day basis, that doesn't work. You can't constantly, like, just run away from your life, right? And so we need to make sure that if we need it in our life, it stays, and we figure out how to be with that thing, or it goes. If it's totally ruining your life, get rid of whatever's happening, right? And every stress is different, and sometimes we don't really understand what the stress is, what the thing is that's causing us the stress, right? And we need to dig deeper into the situation so that we can identify that key thing.
Sometimes that's through prayer, it's through talking to other people, it's through going to the temple. There's lots of different ways to figure out what those things are.
So I have an example in my life. After I had my first son, I was on bed rest for 2 months before I had him, and then he was born 7 weeks early. So he was in the NICU. He was in the NICU for a month. And then a couple of months later, so I had gone back to work after 3 months, and I was working full time. Gavin was working, so we were taking our little one to daycare. And then I think it was like a month and a half later, Gavin had some major mystery medical thing that we're still dealing with, right? And his arm stopped working, and he couldn't go to work anymore. So he was taking care of our son, but couldn't really function. And I had a couple callings at church. I was
3 callings.
I was playing the piano for the primary, playing the piano for the choir, and then on some activities committee. And I was working full time, right? And
Not just working full time, you were also being in charge at work.
I was working at a hospital, so I worked weekends occasionally. And so when I had to miss church, I had to find people to cover for me. And it was an interesting situation. I had to find one person to play the piano for me in primary, which was very specific because of the situation. And then I had to find another person to play for me for the choir. And then they would do these activities like right after I got off of work, and I wasn't sure how to be helpful. And I want to be helpful and I want to do my best. And then I was in charge at work, which means like I'm in charge of all these therapists. And if someone has a problem, they're coming to me with it. And just the way that my personality was at the time, I needed everything to be the best it could be. And if there was a problem, I was taking it on personally myself instead of kind of delegating those things.
On top of this, she was still recovering from having a baby, which took 2 years for her to recover from.
Right, I wasn't okay. Right, so I started having some major health problems. And I couldn't figure it out. And we thought it was all related to this or that. And so I was doing like cardiac monitoring, heart monitoring, and I was meeting with doctors and whatever. And I would just be sitting there and my heart rate would be up in the 130s. So normal is like 70, okay? So I'm just sitting there and I'd start getting dizzy. My heart rate would just go up. And it was not good for me. And eventually I decided, I was also getting like migraines, right? On top of all this. So it was just like a crazy time. And I finally figured out for myself, I'm like, you know what? I bet you I am just so stressed out right now. And I had finally decided, and I talked with Gavin, and I ended up talking to the bishop and telling him, I'm like, I can't do all of this stuff. It's too much for me. And I asked him to release me from the choir pianist position. And I, at work, started having to delegate to people and having to really disconnect myself and not making it all about me getting everything done and just doing what I could. And it was amazing to see like the difference that made in my stress levels. And then my heart stuff started figuring itself out and I started getting less migraines. And so sometimes we really need to look at what we have on our plates and what we're okay with doing. You know, in college, I had all sorts of callings at the same time and it was fine. I didn't have all this other stuff that I was doing. I was going to school, but we just need to look at our situation that we're in right now and kind of figure out what's going to work for us. And if something is so stressful, then we need to talk to some people. We need to make some changes, and it's okay.
And I'll address that too. Is we live in a church where we believe, and we strongly believe, that callings come from God, and turning down a calling is shunned on in our society, and it's not great. And I've been in a bishopric, and it's hard when people say no, and it's hard to fill positions that need to be filled and to help people that need to be helped when people say no. But at the same time, Brenda's example, she didn't just make this decision. She was like, no, I don't want to do it, and stopped doing it. No, she prayed about it. She went to the temple. She counseled with the bishop. Bishops aren't perfect, and bishops don't know what's going on in our life. Even though they're called of God and they are God's voice piece. Sometimes we get a calling so that we can have a conversation with the bishop about something. Sometimes we get told to do something so that we go down a different path, like what Brenda said. On my mission, I was called into a very specific area, and I had some health issues, and to the point where I couldn't drive. And I told my companion when I got there, I said, hey, I've been sick, and I've got some problems, and I'm not allowed to drive. And he was like, okay. So we worked for about a week, and in that week, I felt weird and I felt wrong and I couldn't pinpoint it, but I remember I emailed the mission president and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I just feel weird here. Something's off. And after about a week, my companion sat me down and he was like, Elder, are you sure you can't drive? And I was like, yeah, I can't drive. And he's like, well, I can't either. He said, I'm not from this country, and I don't have a license. So he'd been driving illegally for the last week. And I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And so we immediately called the mission president, called the zone leaders, whatever, and we got transferred. So I went to a different area with a companion who could drive, and he got a companion who could drive. And when I stepped foot in that area, everything felt right. Everything felt good. And so should I have said, oh, well, the Lord called me to the wrong area? I don't believe that. The Lord called me to that area, and then I didn't feel right, and I got called to the right area, and I knew that area was right. Sometimes God calls us to do things so that we know that thing is the wrong thing for us. But we can't just quit. We can't just stop. We have to communicate. We have to be honest and be close with your bishop or your Relief Society president or whoever it is and tell them what's going on. Bishops they don't know everything. And you know what? Maybe they need you to tell them, hey, I'm really struggling with this, so that they can know and so that they can help. And maybe it's a calling that gets you there, that gets you the help that you need. But don't just say no to callings. Don't because I don't want to do it, or that's hard, or I'm not comfortable with primary. Brenda hates. That's wrong.
That's a strong word.
That's a strong word. Brenda.
It is not my favorite
older
place
children to younger children, and primary callings have been very hard for her, and she's stressed out about them a lot. But she's taken every one that she's been given, and it's pushed her, and it's been hard for her. But she's grown from it, and it's been really good. So don't just say no, and don't just stop doing your calling. Make sure you're doing things correctly, and counsel with your bishop, counsel with your Relief Society president. So the next piece we want to talk about is just some quick tools that we can use for some self-care to take care of ourselves in a healthy way.
And this is kind of more like scientific. So these are things that you can do for your body, right? Drink water. Water is so important. Our bodies are made up of so much water. And if we get dehydrated, let me tell you, from a physical therapy standpoint, people that I see coming into the hospital that are dehydrated, they are not okay. Like mentally, it messes with you. And so make sure that you're drinking enough water a day. My friend's recommendation is that you drink half of your body weight in water, in ounces, right? So if you weigh 160 pounds, drink 80 ounces of water. 120 pounds, drink 60 ounces of water. It's important for you to do that, and it's so hard sometimes. I am a horrible water drinker. Gavin is like a camel. He just is constantly drinking water. And I have to make a valiant effort to make sure that I drink enough water during the day. I have a water bottle, and I know how much I've drunk, and I just refill it, and then I keep drinking until I've made it to the end. And it makes such a difference for me. I can majorly tell when I haven't drunk enough water. I'm grouchy. I have no energy. So make sure that you're drinking enough water. Plus, it helps flush toxins out of your body. It's so important. Number 2, make sure this is food. It's all about food, right? And
wisdom.
Right now, we are in this weird place, right? We're not in our regular schedules, and it makes it hard. But we need to make sure, especially right now, that we are being consistent with ourselves. So try to be as healthy as possible. That's not to say that we don't eat some snack food here or there or whatever, but try to be healthy and avoid eating too much junk food or not eating enough. I know that sometimes we get so stressed out about what we're doing. I know this is something that I struggle with sometimes, is making sure that I'm making time to eat when I'm supposed to. I get involved in whatever else, and then by the time it's 2 o'clock and I'm like, crap, I didn't eat lunch. And then it just throws off the rest of your day. So make sure that you're trying to be consistent with your food and trying to be healthy. Number 3 is sleep. Find your sweet spot. Everyone's a little different on how much sleep they need. Some people need a little less, some people need a little more, but you got to find what's right for you. I had mono in college, and after that, I have to get a solid 9 hours of sleep for me to feel rested. And if I don't, I am tired and I'm dragging. And I'm bad at this. I'm not super great at being consistent, but when I am consistently getting the same amount of sleep every night, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, I feel so much better. I feel refreshed. So even on the weekends, if you can try to keep, to your regular schedule, I know that it's hard with kids sometimes, but make sure that you're doing what you need for your own body. Number 4 is sunshine, which it's getting so nice outside, so this one's not as hard to do. Gavin has the sunshine. Make sure that you are getting outside 15 minutes a day, okay? You need vitamin D. Your body needs it. It needs the sun. And if it's pouring rain or there's a blizzard outside or something, sit by a cracked open door or window and just get some fresh air, okay? We need it every day. Every day we need nature. And number 5, and I really like this one, but I need to be more consistent, is exercise. Exercise releases endorphins. It's so good for us. Our bodies need to move. It's a really good stress reducer. And if you can get that exercise in every day, maybe not 7 days a week, but 3 to 5 days a week, exercise, get into a routine. If you need to break it up throughout the day, great. If you're a morning person, do it in the morning. I like working out at night. I put my kids to bed, and then I can kind of focus on myself. And find something that works for you. After I had my last baby, I was again on bed rest forever, right? And I want to get back into doing stuff, and I'm hiking up the side of a mountain, and my heart rate just skyrockets, right?
It was scary.
I didn't know what was going on, so I just had to sit down inside the mountain, so I'm like freaking out. So then I'm like, I need to start working out, right? And I start working out, and then I start having all these heart palpitations, so I'm like skipping beats and stuff, and I'm freaking out, and I go to the doctor, and they put me on a heart monitor, and we go and do stress tests, and guess what? I'm stressed out. I'm stressing out over working out, and and there are just things that I don't do now with exercising because it does weird things to my body. So I've kind of had to adjust and whatever. So find what works for you.
A walk around the neighborhood.
If you like cardio, do cardio. If you like lifting weights, lift weights. Do some yoga. Whatever it is, take a bike ride. Find what works for you. Okay?
So the last section, or last 2 sections. So the first last section is seek professional help as needed. If you go to the website of the church that we've talked about several times now, a lot of the recommendation is get help. Talk to somebody. And as a mental health professional, I recommend it. But at the same time, I recommend that it's not for everybody. Not everybody is okay talking to a complete stranger about their deepest, darkest problems and secrets. But I do know that if you don't find somebody, it's just going to get worse. So if that's a close, trusted friend, a spouse, whoever, that's great. But I also really highly encourage seeking professional help. And so does the church. The church recognizes that there is so much more than people need than just say your scriptures and read your prayers and you'll be fine. There's more to it, especially with mental health. There was a talk given by Elder Dallin H. Oaks back when he was in the Quorum of the 12 and not in the first presidency. That he gave at a priesthood session. It's April 2010, called Healing the Sick. And in it, he talks about how as a church we believe in blessings. We believe in the power of the priesthood, and we believe in miracles, and we believe that people can be healed. However, we also believe in modern medicine. So Latter-day Saints believe in applying the best available scientific knowledge and techniques. We use nutrition, exercise, and other practices to preserve health, and we enlist the help of healing practitioners such as physicians and surgeons to restore health. The use of medical science is not at odds with our prayers of faith and our reliance on priesthood blessings. And this is an example he gave of Brigham Young. When a person requested a priesthood blessing, Brigham Young would ask, "Have you used any remedies?" To those who said no, because we wish the elders to lay hands upon us and we have faith that we shall be healed, President Young replied, "That is very inconsistent according to my faith. If we are sick and ask the Lord to heal us and to do all for us that is necessary to be done, According to my understanding of the gospel of salvation, I might as well ask the Lord to cause my wheat and corn to grow without my plowing the ground and casting in the seed. It appears consistent to me to apply every remedy that comes within the range of my knowledge, and then to ask my Father in heaven to sanctify that application to the healing of my body. So, and he goes on to talk about how priesthood blessings are real and that healing can come. And you know what? I fully 100% believe that God could heal someone with a mental illness if that was God's will. But I also believe that God has given us modern medicine and has given us social workers and counselors and psychiatrists and doctors and medications and, scents and other things that can help people and, in different ways. Everybody is different, and we need to find out what works for you. Don't accept one way of doing things. You might go to a counselor. It might be at LDS Family Services. Family Services? I don't think it's LDS Family Services. Family Services. And you might go in and you might not get along with that counselor. And don't think that you have to stick with that counselor. Like Brenda's friend Annie, she went to lots and lots and lots of counselors to find someone that clicked with her. And same thing with her dad. You need to find someone or something that works for you. And blessings can be a part of that. But don't rely solely on a priesthood blessing. You need to do your part. You need to do our own work. And mental health, it doesn't just fix itself. We need to take care of it. We need to take care of ourselves and each other. And so that's the last section I have here is helping others. So a lot of this might relate to you, but a lot of it might not. You might have never had any problems with these things. But I can guarantee you that you know someone that has. As a family or a friend or an acquaintance that's dealing or struggling with anxiety or depression or another mental illness. And they need help. They need support. So what can you do? And again, I'm going to refer back to the church's website. They have some great resources on there for leaders, for friends, for just people who have family members who are struggling and what you can do to help them. The overwhelming consensus is to love them and support them, and that's what we need to do. When someone is struggling and they come to you and they tell you what they're struggling with when you're ministering and they say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, you might have no idea. You're like, I don't even know what that's like. That's horrible. And it might be awkward and it might feel weird. But what you need to do is just say something like, wow, I'm really sorry. That's really hard. How can I help you? Maybe they just want someone to listen. Maybe they do need something. Maybe they need someone to watch their kid for an hour. Or maybe they need, some cookies made for them. And that's other pieces, sometimes they might not be able to vocalize what they need. But you know who does? He's up there.
He knows.
Pray and ask that you can be that tool to help other people and to know exactly what to do. Follow the Spirit in all things.
If you are thinking about someone, get in contact with them.
Yeah.
If you keep thinking about the same person, chances are Heavenly Father is trying to tell you something. And there have been so many times when I've kind of pushed things off and not talked to someone. Like I, in college, had a ministering sister that I kept thinking about. It was kind of weird. It was in the middle of the day. But I was sitting at the Institute building not doing anything, and I didn't call her. And you know what? She had broken her foot and needed to go up to the health center to get an x-ray. And she needed a ride because she broke her foot. And I didn't call her. And I felt so horrible when I found that out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was being prompted to talk to her and I didn't do it. There have been other times when I've talked to someone and then something else comes of it later. And they were so grateful. And it just happened because I said, hey, how are you doing? So if you're thinking about someone, make sure that you contact them in some way. And maybe they just needed a hi or whatever, but make sure that you're following your promptings.
So another part of following the Spirit is to be so kind and be understanding and recognize that our experiences are unique to us. And no one other than Christ knows what we've been through. And so when we prejudge people, and I've done this, I've been that person. When we prejudge other people, oh, they're not showing up to church. Oh, they're not doing their calling. Oh, they're not doing this. And you're thinking negatively about them. You have no idea what's going on in their life. Maybe they're really struggling with mental health. Maybe they just lost their dog. I don't know. There's a million things that could have happened. And that can relate to this other topic that I'd like to discuss just briefly. Is called resilience. And resiliency is your ability to bounce back from traumatic experiences and from other things. And I attended a meeting once, and a chiropractor was giving an example of resilience, and I do not like this example, and this is a bad example of what to do. And he was walking in a clinic, and he passed a room by someone that he knew from church who was in there. And he stopped and to see how she was and how things were going, and he asked her how she was and why she was there. And she told him that she had been raped the night before, and she was there to do a rape kit, test kit. And so he told her, you need to see how this is a positive thing in your life, and how you can, and that this is going to be a good thing for you. And that was the worst thing you could ever say to somebody who's been raped, who's gone through traumatic experiences in the moment. You know what? Resilience is individual. And maybe one day she'll decide that. She'll decide that that experience was a good thing for her. But it's not up to us to decide that for others. We don't get to tell people, suck it up. This is going to be good for you. I'm glad, this is a positive thing for you. That's not being kind. That's not being Christ-like. That's not being compassionate. Just listen to people. An experience that we had was when Brenda's parents lived with us for a couple months. And her dad was really, really struggling with depression. And one day decided to basically chew Brenda out in front of me. And a lot of people would say, well, Gavin, you need to defend your wife. You need to. And I felt spiritually and physically restrained from doing so. Normally I would defend Brenda. But I was physically and spiritually restrained from doing so because of, and I discovered this afterwards, was because he needed that. And he needed me to not judge him. And he needed Brenda to not judge him. And he was really, really struggling. And he needed just to be loved.
He needed to get through what he was saying to me. And it was really hard to sit there and be part of that. But, and it was like 2 hours that he was talking to me about things and bringing things up from years ago. And I was like, what is going on? But you know what? At the end, it kind of came back around, and he's like, I know this is me, and I know these are things that I need to get through. And I felt hurt that Gavin just left me there. But then after him talking to me about what he was feeling and why he did it, like I said, my dad is in such a better place now than he was a couple of years ago after he's gotten the help that he needs. And it's a process. It takes time. And sometimes we are on the other end of that. And we don't always get along or understand what's happening to people. And we need to find some charity in ourselves and really think about where the other person is. And I know that's so hard in the moment. I was so upset and angry, right? Like, I didn't do this. You're in my house. Why are we doing this? And you know what? I feel so grateful to have had that experience now and to have come so far with my dad, that we can have conversations, in-depth conversations about how he's doing and where he's at, and it helped our relationship having him be able to open up to me. Even though it wasn't pleasant for me, we still need to be there for other people.
So we're going to go on because we've run out of time, but I want to quickly go over the website again real quick. There's one section I want to show you guys. So in the website, there's all these wonderful tabs of all these different examples of questions and things you can ask, and there's lots of really, 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 really good videos. And there's one that I would like to assign you guys to go watch when at home. And it's called, What's the Difference Between Perfectionism and Wanting to Be Worthy? And I feel this is really important for all of us as disciples of Christ. And there's some great scriptures, some great talks, some great conference things. And then there's this video by this young woman. And just watch it. It is so powerful. I think she has such a strong testimony, about working through some struggles that she's had in regards to perfectionism. And we've given you a lot. Hold on, I'll get back to us. We've given you a lot of things today. And it's been long. I apologize. We've given you a lot of suggestions, a lot of tools, and we don't want to overwhelm you. That's one of the things that can happen with anxiety. We give you lots of stuff, and you go, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this?" Don't do all of it. Find something that applies to you and do that. Look for somebody else. Look to help others. If it's you who's struggling, do one thing that helps you. Maybe talk to your bishop. Maybe get a counselor. Maybe talk to your spouse. Maybe talk to a friend. Reach out to someone you know is struggling. Do something. And I know as you pray and as you involve the Lord in this and use the resources we've given you, go to the website. Please do. Open it up on your phone. It's super easy. Use those things and pray and reach out to others who are struggling, because I know if you do, you will help and you will help yourself. And I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I would like to add my testimony to that. It takes time, and it doesn't just go away. This is usually something that we deal with, and the Lord can help us, and He can guide us to do those things that we need to in order to help ourselves. And as you listen and as you go through these things and you find how it can help you and how you can help others, sometimes we go through things for other people. We just never know. So I want you at this time to really kind of take a deep look at yourself and counsel with the Lord and counsel with your family. And if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, reach out to someone, like Gavin was saying. Find that person that's going to be your support, and don't feel like you need to hide. Make sure that you are reaching out and really find someone who's going to help you. And I know that as we do these things and as we go through these times that are crazy and we help each other, that the Lord is going to be with us and that everything is going to work out.
And we'll find joy and happiness.
We love joy. So, keep on keeping on. Thanks, guys.